And welcome back to our third panel of the Interlude Press 24-hour launch party. And no, it's not unusually bright at 1 a.m. in Los Angeles. We actually had to pre-record this session today because it is running at a funky time of day to ask anybody to actually participate and be awake and alert and as beautiful as our guests are today. And so I want to introduce everybody to the authors of this session about the novellas. These are the final two titles that we're going to be introducing as our launch titles. Both are novellas, which we consider books that are generally under about 55,000 words or so. Doesn't mean they're any less dense. These are two fantastic stories, and we think you're really going to enjoy them. So let me introduce Lila Suzanne. Lila, if you can wave. And on Tumblr, people may know you as
a lilac tree.
Wonderful, thank you. And she wrote Pivot and Slip, which is that gorgeous book you may have seen around with a very hot-looking gentleman on the front, drawn by pencil pushing enthusiasts. People are asking for his phone number. Sorry, he doesn't really exist. But fantastic cover. I'd like to know too if he is actually out there. We'll find out more about Felix Montero in a bit. Also, I want to introduce Carrie Pack, who has our fifth of our launch titles, Designs on You.
Hi. You might know me on Tumblr as Axe. I've been around a bit, maybe. But yeah, Designs on You is coming out next month.
Terrific. Terrific book. And you know, both of these went through a lot of change and work. You know, a lot of work goes into these books, no matter what the length. And I think we've got a good chance to kind of talk about how things changed, what your goals were in turning this into a book. You know, what you wanted to see different between the fan fiction and the final, if anything. So I think a good place to start, of course, is to find out a little bit about what these books are. And a little bit about the story. So Lila, maybe if you can tell us first a little bit about Pivot and Slip.
Sure. Pivot and Slip is the story of Jack, who is an Olympic hopeful swimmer turned yoga instructor, and Felix, who's a boxer who kind of lost everything when he got injured during a fight and finds himself in Jack's yoga class. And there's not only this immediate attraction between them, but this connection and this understanding between them. And I think at its heart it's a story of dreams and failure and how you sort of pick yourself up and put the pieces of your life back together and do it with somebody who's willing to stay by your side during the harder parts. So.
That sounds great. Carrie, maybe you can tell us a bit about Designs on You.
Sure. My novella, Designs on You, actually is kind of loosely rooted in a career I had right out of college as a graphic designer, but my character's experience is much better than mine ever was. But his name is Scott, and he's kind of pushing 30 and kind of in a rut professionally, romantically, and he kind of falls for this, this model that he's retouching photos of, and interestingly enough, it kind of parallels, as someone who is part of fan culture, kind of how we develop these immense feelings for people that we've never even met. And I find that kind of fascinating, so I kind of use that to really kind of root Scott's initial obsession with this person that he doesn't really know.
We're going to ask you more about obsession and how that plays into books. I think that's a very interesting word choice. So both of these titles started out as fan fiction, and they were conversion projects. And you know, jump right in. This isn't to either one of you in particular, both actually. Let's talk a little bit about that process of starting with fan fiction and turning it into a published book, into a novel, and what your priorities were in doing that and how you went about accomplishing that. We get a lot of questions along those lines.
Yeah.
So
I've noticed we got a lot of questions too about how different all the books are, and I can't speak for anybody else. I've only read my own adaptation, but I really felt there was a point in time, because the original story that Designs on You is based on, I had no plans for it beyond fan fiction. So in my mind, the characters were who they were in the fan fiction, which the interesting thing is the challenges it poses, because the great thing about fan fiction, and why I actually started writing fan fiction in the first place, was that you didn't have to get too much into character. You could get right into the story because the characters already existed in the mind of the reader. And I wanted to work on my pacing and my plot, and that's why I started writing fan fiction. And so for me to then go back and say, okay, who are these people independent of the fan fiction that I wrote? Because anytime you write an alternate universe AU type fan fiction, you are sort of creating partially an original character, because you've changed their circumstances, so that's going to change some things about the character. So I really thought about who these people would be if they weren't who I had originally envisioned them as. And that took some time, but once I got that, it became its own story. It changed in my mind and was easy to visualize who they were and hear their voices and kind of get to know them.
Mine was really similar. I feel it was very character driven, and once I looked at the story, and that started the influence of the characters, who they would be, but then as I started piecing them together, I could think about how to adapt the story around them. So for mine, it was definitely very character driven, and once I figured out who they were, I felt like it was pretty easy to keep the essence of the story and keep the things that needed to stay the same, but make it their story instead.
Do you see your characters as being very, very different than where they started out? Are these entirely different people? Are there things that people would recognize if they'd read the original fan fiction?
I think yeah, you recognize. For me, I read through it until it felt like Jack and Felix's story in this world that I had already created.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, Felix, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ax.
No, it's okay. I would say kind of the same thing. I mean, I had a similar experience. In terms of where the inspiration for Jamie, who's the male model in Designs on You, he stayed the same out of probably any of my characters, because he was largely a personality that I had created anyway. And so strip away the physical appearance of an established character, he becomes an original character a little bit in his own right. So he was a little easier. Scott took me a while to find, and of course he went from being kind of nerdy, kind of soft-spoken, into being this kind of, I mean, he has tattoos and gauges, and, you know, he's scruffy, and, you know, it's a different person when I visualize it all together. So
Lila, your character of the boxer, who I think he's a very interesting character. He's kind of dark in his personality and what he's gone through. It is dramatically different than the original in fan fiction. Also, you completely reimagined this character.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
He definitely comes from a more difficult background, and I wanted to be aware of the place that it's set, and that the cast should be diverse, and looking at athletes, and you know, I think you're right that he's sort of dark and he has some anger, but what I really wanted to keep is he's also very sweet and is not bitter despite having sort of a difficult background.
And re-envisioned as a Latino athlete.
Yes, because it was important to me to have diverse characters, and given where it's set and that we're talking about athletes, and it's in Brooklyn and the Bronx, and it didn't make any sense for it not to be diverse, but it's definitely something I was aware of that needs to be, we need diversity in the media, and as he started to take shape in my mind, it also just kind of made sense that that's who he was. So
to follow up on that, we have a question from Chocolate for You that is about the character of Felix, or specifically about the role of boxing in your story. And Chocolate for You writes, so excited for the event. Sadly, I cannot watch live, but here's a question for Lila. Did you have background knowledge about boxing or other related sports experiences before starting this story, or did you learn it through research?
I learned it through research. I am actually not a sports person, though I am surrounded by sports people. The reason for boxing and then swimming, boxing was sort of like a fandom trend. And so I learned about it from there. And then I picked swimming to go with the boxing because they're very individually focused sports. So I thought, if something was the dream was going to end for him, it was going to be him. You fail and you succeed based on yourself and not your team. So, but yeah, I did a lot of research and I watched boxing videos, which isn't my favorite sport, even as far as sports go. And I watched swimming, and I had to look at a lot of boxers and a lot of swimmers. So that was, really difficult.
That was rough duty, wasn't
yeah, that was
rough. This is a good question. It actually comes up all the time. It leads to a broader question, one I want to toss to Carrie, having to do with, do you write what you know, or can you research and fill in the gaps? And I think this is sort of an age-old question in fan fiction, too.
It's interesting because I have another book that I'm kind of still toying with, and it was a combination of the two. And so was this book, to be honest. I mean, you have to write what you know in terms of humanity, human emotion, those kinds of things. But no, I think you can research enough to be able to be outside the scope of what you already know. And I actually was reading, gosh, I'm going to shoot myself. I think it was a Hemingway quote or something I read the other day about being too close to something to be able to write it. And that it was talking about how he had to go to Paris to write about Michigan, and he couldn't write about Paris while in Paris. And I think that's very similar. Designs on You comes from parts of my early career. We're talking, I'm probably 10, 12 years out from that now. I haven't worked in that job that inspired this in that long. I don't know that I could have written it while I was doing that job, but it did inform a lot of stuff that I wrote about. But I had to look things up, like where is the industry now versus where was it 10 years ago. Things could have changed, and so I don't think you have to stick to what you know, and I think any good writer is going to do some research. You have to, even if it's just to figure out how to spell the name of the city you're setting it in. You have to research something.
True. And I don't know if there's an answer to that question, in all honesty, because I know people who are very adamant that you should write what you know because there's authenticity to it. On the other hand, isn't writing about taking you to new places? And I think everyone who does one of these panels is going to get asked this question: do you write what you know, or do you just make it up? And the people who write in, let's say if you're in a science fiction genre creating a new universe of some sort, well, yeah, you kind of are making it up.
And I think too, you can still use what you know. If you're writing in a genre or maybe a subject matter that you aren't totally familiar with, like Lila was saying, she had to research boxing, but I'm sure she understands, success and failure and what, what that would mean for a person who had a dream that, she used, and I used it too. There are characteristics about the characters in my book that are me or my husband or my mom, or, it's like you take those little details that make a person a real human being and you transfer those to the characters, or you use things about a setting that you know. And so I think every writer uses what they know, but they don't have to stick to writing strictly what they know.
I think there's always pieces of you in whatever you write, and pieces of your life, even if it looks nothing like your actual life, for sure.
I think you're right. Absolutely. No matter what you're writing, there's going to be a little essence of some sort of your experience, even if that's not specifically what you're writing about. I am going to jump to another reader question. We have several of them. Let's see. Let's go with Mander3 Swish asks for Axe. Hi, Axe. Actually, it says question for the panel, so anyone who wants to jump in. What were some of the things you learned about fiction writing, or one of the biggest lessons you learned while adapting your wonderful fanfic into original fiction?
What does this character look like? That was the number one. I mean, I think I had that note on pretty much every secondary character. And honestly, this was the opportunity that I used to work in a little bit more diversity, because I hadn't realized that I have a secondary character who's a makeup artist. Her name is Sheena. And I envisioned her as African American in my mind, but I never actually described her that way. And I actually modeled her appearance on a character on a reality TV show, because I love this character. I mean, well, character, a person. She's reality TV, but people create characters on reality TV, let's be real. But I modeled her after that, and she's got an afro, and it's kind of blue. You know, it's natural color, but the tips of it are blue, and just I wanted somebody that looked a little more New York than, you know, than some of these other characters were. And so for me, the biggest thing that I learned was like describing what people look like and how to do that, especially when you're trying to create a little more diversity. How do you describe someone without using the thing that I see complained about the most is when they refer to someone that's of a darker complexion as, like, you know, mocha colored skin or chocolate colored skin. It's like, God, how do you get around that? Because it is a really pretty poetic way to say it, but it's also a horrible, horrible stereotype that gets overused.
Yeah, I think describing the characters in a way that's not like an awkward info dump was definitely a challenge, and filling in all of those spaces, I think, where you don't have the canon of a show to rely on. It's like, oh, I have to explain what this apartment looks like, but not in like, he walked in and the apartment looked like da 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 da. So that filling in the spaces was new, but it was fun to kind of learn how to do that.
Ax, you mentioned something I wanted to follow up on a little bit, because you mentioned getting notes on your secondary characters and that this was a big thing. So let's talk a little bit about editing a book versus beta, which is what people I think are generally used to in fan fiction. And that was a term that was so new to me, coming from the world of editors. And you know, my background was in newspapers originally, and having been an editor for a long time. Suddenly hearing the word beta, which I think of as beta testing, and can you two talk a little bit about the differences between going through and working with betas in fan fiction and the process of editing, which you've both now obviously been through with your books?
Is much more rigorous. I'm actually bad at using a beta because I am very impatient. I tend to write quickly, and then I just want to put it out there. Because if I dwell on it, then I'm gonna mess with it too much. So it was more rigorous. It was making you dig deeper into the story and really think about what you're trying to say. And for me, there was a sense of like learning how to take my ego out of it and realize that the notes are to make the book better, and it's not about my writing is terrible or this carefully chosen phrase that I picked and they took out the and it's like, how dare you take out the and? You know, it's not about that. It's about making the book better.
I think that's funny because I am an editor, have worked as an editor. I've worked as a writer for quite a while professionally, and that feeling never goes away. Your initial reaction is always, this person doesn't know what they're doing. Right. You know, it's funny because actually another one of the interlude authors, Mimsy Hale, has been my beta for going on, almost 3 years now, maybe. Pretty much as long as I've been in fandom. And she's pretty brutal. I look for that in somebody who's going to read anything of mine because I want it to be better. And, you know, I beta her stuff, and it's the same kind of thing. But professional editing is still more brutal. It's still, you know, because it's professional. It's going to be in print, and you have a copy editor and a proofreader, which are totally different jobs. And the copy editor is trying to make it completely, you know, read better. The proofreader primarily is looking to make sure that you didn't, you know, spell something wrong. Like mine tend to be typos, but, or in my case, I really felt like it made my writing stronger. It cut a lot of words when I got to the proofread stage, but it made it stronger. And it was a lot of mistakes that I would I would just beat up my own students for. Because I also teach writing, so writing.
Did either of you find, well, let me back up a little bit. For both of these stories, how long had they been out as fan fiction before you started work on them as novels?
Mine was probably right at or a little over a year. It had been out as a fan fiction, I think. I want to say I finished it in November, not of this last year, but the year before.
How about you, Lila?
I'm not sure. I want to say it's maybe close to 2 years.
Okay.
It was one of the first long AUs I had ever done, so it was.
I want to say I read yours before mine was written. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure it was out before.
So with that in mind, the first time that you went back to look at it, knowing that you were about to reimagine it, what did it look like to you? And what was your first impression?
The worst thing I had ever written.
Yeah, it was hard to look at.
Because it was one of the first, I think it was the first thing I ever wrote that had legs. And so the story was really great. But, you know, and fan fiction in a lot of ways can be really self-indulgent. And it relies heavily on trope and, you know, and getting rid of some of that cheese that was in it, I think. I think I made it a much stronger story. It has a thematic kind of element to it that it didn't have before. Yeah, I think I remember looking at it going, they want to publish this? Well, and then, of course, I immediately went, I can do this!
Because I mean, I've gone through the same thing, and I was stunned and disgusted with myself when I read it. Because, for example, I found, despite spell check, I cannot spell the word judgment to save my life. And it was throughout my story. And there were a lot of other things as well that I was sort of mortified when I came back after a year and had read something and went, no, that didn't work for me. Did you have the same feeling, Lila?
Yeah, there's definitely some phrases that was like, why did I ever think to phrase something, you know, that way? And I also was struck with the whole fated to be together sort of theme in the story that I think is a very Kurt and Blaine sort of thing, and I really felt like I need to have a reason for these characters to need each other instead of just because they're supposed to end up together. So,
good point.
I had the same thing. I remember letting my mom read. I let my mom read the fan fiction.
What did your mom say? What did your mom say?
Actually, that's what I was getting ready to say. She says to me, she goes, "This main character isn't very likable." And I said, and of course, thinking of where it originated. Excuse me, Blaine Anderson, not likable? What are you talking about? But I saw what she was saying, because you have this guy that's essentially a fanboy. He's like drooling over this photo on his laptop, and it's just not very likable. He's kind of a creep. And
I want to ask you about exactly that. You have hit on the question that I've been waiting.
I segued for you.
You did, and you did it magnificently, because let's talk about Scott. I think you had a very unique challenge here, and I know it was a challenge. I mean, because we've talked about this before, but I think you more than met it. But how do you deal with a character that, frankly, is walking a bit of a tightrope in terms of likability? I mean, on the one hand, you want to be rooting for these two to get together. On the other hand, there are sections of the book where you may look at him and go, I'm not sure I agree with what he's doing here.
There's some moral and ethical dilemmas definitely with his behavior, particularly very early on. And what I really like about it was, one of my favorite TV shows for the past few years has been Catfish, a show that MTV does about people getting catfished online, which ironic in light of recent events. Right. But the funny part about that to me always is the way that people will fall for an image of someone. They'll fall for this photograph and a few text messages, and they have no information about this person apart what the person has chose to share with them and or what they've crafted in their mind. And it's a very common thing. I mean, as the three of us know from being in fandom, we're surrounded all the time by people who have, in one way or another, developed an emotional attachment to the public personas of celebrities or the characters that they play. and have to varying degrees of emotion and creepiness. We've all done some questionable blogging. There are people that do questionable things in real life. It's a very human characteristic for whatever reason. And so to me, it was really easy to make Scott more likable, because to take him from being that creep staring at his computer and make him a likable person. At first, he's just intrigued. He's a voyeur. He's watching this. He's looking at photos of this gorgeous male model who is he's not even what you normally would think of when you think, male model. You're thinking like Calvin Klein underwear guy. He's actually more of your like runway type, lankier, couture kind of thing. And he finds himself intrigued, and I felt it was important, even when I wrote this as fan fiction, of them meeting pretty early on, because I wanted there to be a line between the fantasy and the reality. And having Scott realize that there's a real person behind his fantasies and what that means, and for him, that realization that I can't be a creep about someone that I'm becoming friends with. So I think it's a really interesting, if you look at it from that perspective, it draws a really interesting parallel to the way that celebrity is handled with all of, we have with social media, and, what you see of a celebrity on Twitter is not the real them. It's what they choose to share with you, or what their publicist chooses to share with you. And it's edited and thought out, and sometimes it's not, but then that's, it's not their whole life. So the same thing within Designs on You. Scott is not seeing the whole picture, even though he's looking at the whole picture. Oh. I swear it's not full of bad puns like that, I promise.
I'm intrigued that you talk about the role of fandom and perceptions of celebrity or of characters and whatnot, and how that comes to play in your book. And while this is not a smooth transition, I'm going to try it anyway, and talk about the role or continuing role of your fan fiction in fandom. And, are these pieces staying up? Can you read the originals?
Yeah.
Yep. Mine is, it's on Tumblr, it's on LiveJournal, it's on Archive of Our Own. It's still up. I think it's been put in a PDF too.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, mine. Well, the novel title is different from the fan fiction. The fan fiction was A Look That's Made for You, but yeah, it's staying up. It's on fanfiction.net. It's on Archive of Our Own. It's on Tumblr somewhere. It's still out there, and I think that's one of the things that really attracted me to Interlude in the first place, because I don't want to force someone to pay money to read this story if they love it, but at the same time, they're going to get more if they do. But I think it's neat that the original's still there. I think it lends itself to commentary on fandom and what that means. Look at all the talent that, it's interesting how this all came about, but we're a part of a community. And, we've all read each other's stuff for the most part, and so much talent is out there. And one of the other Interlude authors, AJ DeWall, is the reason why I started writing. I was reading her fan fiction. Yeah, I was reading her fan fiction that Forever Man is based on, and I thought, wow, I want to write something. I want to try to write something that makes other people feel what I'm feeling when I read this.
I think I know 3 different people that particular work of fan fiction influenced to start writing fan fiction themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's remarkable to see that, and I think that's one of the great things about fan culture and fan fiction writing, is that it inspires people to do and to create and to keep trying and to get better, and I think that's just such a cool thing.
And for me, it relates also to the themes in my story about dreams and giving up on dreams or losing dreams, where I had kind of turned my back on writing and thought, I'll never make it, I'll never be good enough. And I had stopped after writing for pretty much my whole life since I was a child. I found fan fiction, and fandom gave me, my dream back. It gave me a place to write again where I could say, okay, yes, I can do this. Even if it's just fan fiction, which it's not. That's enough for me. I have it back. Yeah. I have my dream back. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting too because Lila, I read Pivot and Slip as fan fiction, and I just loved the story. I thought there was a lot to it that
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan of AU fan fiction because I love the idea of let's take these two characters and throw them in another situation and see what shakes out. What about them changes if you take them out of the setting they're in, or if you put them in another time, or if you make them, fairies or witches or whatever you want to do to them. And I think yours was really, you could really sense the place and the different, the different paths that they had taken. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited to read the finished work. I haven't seen it yet. So.
Some of us are lucky and got a sneak peek,
Perks of running the business.
Excited about it. I'm pretty excited about it.
I'm also lucky because of my role. I don't have to read all the stuff that happens in the middle when you're working with the editors. I just kind of go like this and wait for the final version to come out and then reacquaint myself with it. And it's really exciting because, I mean, each of these first 5 titles has turned out so well. I think it's just a great commentary on fan culture and the writers out there, amateur writers out there, and how very good and very talented people are, and it's inspiring. We have another question here from Carl Blaine, and this has to a degree been answered, but let's do this because I think it's a good question. It's for both of you. It says, as a fanfic writer who hopes to be published someday, I'm so curious about the process of going from writing fic based on pre-established characters, tropes, etc., to writing a fresh new novel. What were some of the challenges you faced while you were writing your manuscript, and what, if anything, made the process significantly different than writing fan fiction? I mean, the character, obviously, and right. Giving them more detail from the original. I know we've covered that a bit. Tropes. What about tropes? Did you see them in there? Were you comfortable with? Do tropes belong in the final version or not? Is there a place for them?
Mine were very character-driven, and I don't know that I ever thought this cannot be like fan fiction because, as we just talked about, there's really high-quality fan fiction that that I didn't feel like, oh no, it can't look at all like fan fiction. For me, once I had my characters, once I could hear their voices, that was where it got easier to do it as an original story that way. And now that I've done it twice, I feel like I've gotten better at hearing them, and as I went through the process, it got easier to imagine new characters, and I've grown very fond of them just as much as Kurt and Blaine, really. So,
how about you, Ax?
I'm back. Sorry, afternoon thunderstorm in the Wang.
Oh no!
I missed the question. Our power cut out, and I had to wait for you.
Oh, okay. This is a question from Carl Blaine. I hope I pronounced that right. As a fanfic writer who hopes to be published someday, I'm so curious about the process from writing fic based on pre-established characters and tropes to writing something that is a fresh new novel. What were the greatest challenges you faced in creating your manuscript, and what, if anything, was significantly different from writing the fan fiction original? I know we've covered some of this, but...
Well, to maybe answer a little bit differently, I think, than I did before. Another hard part for me was really dealing with not wanting to change it, if that makes sense. Like, yeah. Even though I know I said that, like, I hated it when I looked at it again, but at the same time, you become attached to your words, and there might be lines. There were, the thing about fan fiction is a great way to make an AU feel believable is to throw in a line from canon. You throw in, you take my breath away, and suddenly it's like, oh, that's so that character. Yeah, and that was hard because those lines fit the scene that it was in, and trying and having to go back and take that out and then figure out, okay, how would this person actually say that, and does it need to be there? Is that true to this character? Again, it goes back to characterization, because fan fiction relies heavily on the fact that everyone knows who you're talking about. They can visualize the person, they know their personality, they know their background, they know that they're meant to be together. You don't have to tell, so you don't have to show or tell anything. That part's there. You can jump right in. And that was hard. It was really hard.
Did you have to kill some darlings?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I literally had to kill You Take My Breath Away. Killed it.
We're getting very graphic now.
Stabbed it with a pen. I was like all, Chamber of Secrets, Tom Riddle diary on it.
I'm really looking forward to a couple of the later panels when we have quite a few writers at one time in different stages of the process. I mean, you're both done, but
I'm still working.
Oh, that's right. You've still got to proofread, but you're very close.
Very.
Very. And need to be. We're just.
Carrie is so very.
Yeah. But we have some writers who are just getting going. We have some who are kind of mid-process and just about to turn in some manuscripts and haven't started editing yet, and some who are sort of midstream with editing. And getting them all in the same conversation, I think, is going to be really fascinating, because, let's face it, we all have darlings. And I think when you get into that process, particularly with the editing, but also in the writing, you're going to find yourself having to make a decision about whether they live or die. And it's not an easy decision. And
I am looking forward to eventually writing, when you're writing your original characters, there's kind of an unwritten rule in fandom that you can't kill off the main characters. I'm looking forward to actually killing a darling. Not the words, but the characters.
Killing the darling. Maybe someone is. Who knows?
Ooh.
Okay. Let's see. We are coming close to the end. So what I would like to do, first of all, if there's anything that you want to say about the book, make your pitch, or something about a character or this or that we've not covered, here's your chance. Carrie.
Buy it. Designs on You. It's out August 19th. One of the things I didn't touch on was I created an entirely new character. I was talking about making my main character more likable, and I gave him someone to talk to about this infatuation. And so he has a roommate. His name is Ben, and Ben is Ben's a character. Ben's kind of me, in terms of a tell it like it is, get over yourself, move on, or it's a, pardon my language, but shit or get off the pot, And he tells him that. So I like that kind of character. You need somebody to tell your character to move forward. Get the plot going.
Yep, I love those characters.
Me too.
Lila.
For me, I think I want to say that the process has made this story a stronger story, and even though you will recognize it, I really worked on making characters that people would root for and care about, and making the story say something. So I think it's worth your time. That I definitely put a lot of thought and effort into it. So.
And it shows. It really does. It's a terrific. They're both terrific books. We are going to do now the rapid fire round. Quick questions, quick answers. These are the kinds of things that, for example, all of our authors are doing virtual book tours, and if you follow any of them or drop in on them, they're with book bloggers. Frankly, outside of the fan culture, to general readership, and they get asked sometimes really thought-provoking, great questions, and sometimes they just get asked, what's your favorite color? Really quirky questions. So here we go, rapid fire round. What is your favorite book of all time? Go.
I'm going to say The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Why?
Because it's funny, but in a smart way, and that's something I try to aim for.
It's a good book. Axe. Favorite book?
My favorite book is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I like any book that can make a larger commentary on society. And it's, it kind of originated that dystopian future genre, and looking at, of course, now looking at it, it's, it's takes place in the past. But I remember reading that and thinking, gosh, this is such a cynical way to look at the future, but I could see how easily something like that could happen, where you're burning books and the firemen burn books instead of, they set fires instead of putting them out. So, and of course, my favorite quote ever, it comes from the coda to that book when Ray Bradbury, when it came out again, and it says, there's more than one way to burn a book, and this world is full of people running about with lit matches. As a journalism major, that one spoke to me.
Now,
don't censor me.
Are those two the most influential books on your choices to write?
No.
Okay.
You know this. I have yet to dive into science fiction. I'm working on it now. I'm working on writing a completely original novel involving time travel. So,
you skipped ahead to one of my rapid fire questions.
Well, there you go. I did it 2 in 1. How much more rapid fire?
It's a two-for. Lila, what do you have on tap next?
I have sent my second book in for editing, the very beginning stages of it, and it's a romantic comedy, and I had a ton of fun writing it, and I adore the characters. I think I took everything I learned from Pivot and Slip and applied it to this new story that I will be talking about in a second panel, and I cannot wait to reveal a little bit more about it. I'm very excited.
And there might be a sneak peek.
And there is a little sneak peek at the end of Pivot and Slip, so a little treat there.
Our first author to go for a twofer. Congratulations, Lila. I mean, you are a writing machine. I don't know how you do it. I wouldn't be.
It took a hold and it wouldn't let go. So.
First pick you ever wrote?
Oh God! Please don't go looking for it. No, I will own up to this. The first fic I wrote. Oh no, that's not even the first one I wrote. Oh my gosh. It's unfinished. I'm one of those horrible people that never finished a fic, and I wrote something in the Torchwood fandom, and I never finished it because I got sucked into Glee.
Is it still out there?
Yeah.
Find it?
You could find it, but you'd have a hard time finding it, I think. But it's out there, and it's probably not very good. But the first one I wrote in fandom features Kurt as a stripper who he got into it because Rachel dared him, and stuck with it because he wanted to fund his wardrobe, his shopping habit.
So mine was, the first one I wrote was a future fic. It was in Glee, it was Kurt and Blaine, and I wrote it, and I printed it out, and I folded it up and put it in my underwear drawer and thought, all right, I got it out of my system, and then, it was fun, but I'm not going to do it again. Obviously, I did not get it out of my system, so I have it, but only I can ever see it.
No, I published mine.
I didn't. I thought I never would, and yet here I am.
I love that it's still tucked away. It is.
It's still tucked away. Yep.
We're gonna try and puzzle this out. Someday.
Maybe I'll rewrite it.
Okay, one last one, and then we're going to announce the winners of the ebook raffles. And last but not least, tell us one thing that we would be surprised to know about you.
I was a preschool teacher. I don't know if that's surprising, but it's definitely different than what I'm doing now.
I taught myself how to read when I was 3.
You taught yourself?
My mom says that I started, mostly I had memorized the books she would read to me, but I got to where I would recognize words and other things from the things that I had memorized and could start, I entered kindergarten at 4.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Congratulations. See, born to be a writer.
I was born to be a reader, that's for damn sure. The writing was a little sketchy. I used to write my name. I couldn't remember how many R's were in it, and then the E would have, it was all caps. You know how you do that when you're a kid? And the E would have like 4 or 5 lines on it. So I couldn't remember how many lines were on the E.
I remember when I was learning to spell, I got a hold of some crayons, and it was like a gift box, and I just started, thinking, oh, here, go color. Well, apparently I decided practicing letters in random orders, and I spelled, I was, you know, an itty-bitty kid who spelled out the F-bomb by accident and shocked and horrified my parents.
Nice.
It starts early. Okay, well, first of all, everyone that if we answered your question or referred to your question on air, you're going to get a goodie from us. I think our big winner today will be receiving, if I can grab it here, we love this one, the Oscar Wilde action figure. Yay. And other assorted, we have IP bookmarks. Everybody will get those. They're very cool, very cute. Our graphic designer does wonderful, wonderful work. We've got cool swag. But the most important stuff is thanks to everyone who entered the raffle for your multi-format DRM-free ebook. So that means you can read it on any e-reader you use, as opposed to, say, going to Amazon and just getting one that fits your Kindle, or going to Apple and getting one that fits your iPad. This will work on everything. So, Lila, do you have the name of your winner?
The winner is Caroline, who goes by Bowtie Oblige.
Congratulations, Bowtie Oblige. We will be, by the way, emailing you to get in contact as far as, well, we have your email address, but anyway, we'll follow up to make sure that you know that you're getting this as soon as the book is released. And Carrie, who is your winner?
I love my winner because my winner's name is Carol, which is my mother's name, and they go by G Bear's Mom 3, which I find hysterical because my mom used to call me Carrie Bear when I was little. So I hope you aren't my mom.
I was about to say,
I don't think it is. No. My mom uses the same username for everything, and it's not that. So Carol, who is someone's mom, but not my mom, you have won a free copy of Designs on You, which not only can you read on e-readers, but also on your laptop or desktop, what have you, because it's also PDF form. So you don't need to have to worry about having an e-reader of any kind.
Wherever you read, you will be able to read it. Just not on paper. You will not be
out. You could print it out and take it. Matter of fact, if you won that, and you
killing a tree.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you really are that, you want hard copy and you couldn't afford it, and you were the winner, you could print it out. And the nice thing is, if you have a free version of Adobe Acrobat, you can print it up like 2 pages, and you can fold it and make it look like a real book.
And it's formatted to look just like the books. And our typesetting is terrific. It really, these are some gorgeous books. Pivot and Slip by Lila Suzanne with that, I'm sorry, you're seeing my backyard reflected in his face. There we go.
There we go.
Much better. And by the way, these are mini posters that will be going up as prizes for people asking questions during our art section later on in the day at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, Designs on You. There's my backyard again. There we go. We want to make sure we see all that.
There's Jamie's butt.
There's Jamie's butt. So those books you'll be winning. These 2 books will be available and starting to be delivered August 12th and 19th. She says with a question mark at the end. Yes, August 12th and 19th. They are on sale, pre-sale in the U.S. and Canada right now. Whereas if you order the print book now, you will get the multi-format DRM-free ebook for free with your print copy. So always good to buy in advance. If you live outside the U.S. and Canada, you'll be able to get it after the drop date. And we also have the same promotion for you, available for 2 months after the book becomes available. We'll have all the instructions about this online, so I don't have to go through all the details, but basically you let us know that you purchased it, show us the receipt, and we will email you the ebook version. So you will not be losing out on, oh, we have a kitty.
She just started bugging me, so this is Zoe. She came to visit and say hi. Say hi, Zoe. She wants to be as popular as Brian Colfer. That's her goal.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, those are our books of the hour. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Carrie and Lila, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, whether you're doing it at 4 a.m., which we totally understand if you're not, or if you're going to join us later. All of these videocasts are going to end up on our YouTube page, just kind of automatically when we're done. So you can always tune in later and hear what these good folks have to say about their books and writing, and follow along and get to meet the authors, which is always great. Our next panel will be in an hour, and that one, quick, grab the cheat sheet, is about fan fiction, fan culture, and fans gone pro. This is going to be a lively group with wordplay, Januarium, and Stony 321, so we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.